Okay, we are at 9 o'clock and we are ready to get started. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and good afternoon to all of you joining us from across the Atlantic in Europe. Thank you for spending your valuable time with us today. We're looking forward to this webinar. Just a little housekeeping before we move on, in case you want to shoot us some questions. We hate to mute you all as part of the webinar, but apparently it's the best way we can provide the best experience to all of you. So sorry to keep you all on mute, but you do have the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Please use the Q&A button to send us questions, and we will make sure we take those questions as we go along and get them answered for you itself. So over the next 40 to 45 minutes, we will discuss some of the challenges AP departments are facing today and how we can help you address it. I'm Sushil John, VP of Marketing here at Ibml, and joining me today is Mark Brusso. Mark is an industry veteran who has spent over last 2 decades in providing solutions and publishing thought leadership in accounts payable and accounts receivables. Mark, you want to introduce yourself?
Thanks so much for having me today, Sushil. For the past 2 decades, I've been helping businesses automate document-intensive processes that are inefficient and ineffective. And when you're looking for inefficient and ineffective document-intensive processes, look no further than invoice processing. So I look forward to speaking with you all about what you can do about all that.
Thanks, Mark. And also joining me today is my experienced colleague, Ron Rayner, who will show us how the magic is done with some live demonstrations. Ron?
Thank you, Sushil. And good morning, everybody. My name is Ron Renner. I'm a senior software solutions architect here at Ibml. I've only been in the industry working with high-end OCR-based solutions since 1994. So, a little bit of time in working with these type of solutions, and happy and excited to be able to share with you what we can offer for you this morning.
The part Ron didn't tell you is that he was only 5 years old when he started. So without further ado, let's get started here. Mark, the first question is to you. What is the concept of touch-free processing, invoice processing, and how does it compare to the reality of most accounts payable departments these days?
Yeah, you know, Sushil, as an Eagles fan, I dream of the Eagles winning another Super Bowl, but accounts payable leaders, well, they dream of an environment where invoices are received electronically and flow through their departments without anyone ever having to touch them. That's right. The information is ingested, it's digitized, it's extracted, it's validated, and it's posted right to that accounting system or ERP without anyone ever having to lift a finger. Accounts payable staff only intervene when absolutely necessary. The reality, however, is significantly different, as you'll see on the next slide.
Yeah, sounds great, Mark. How is the reality really different? I know you made a reference there to the Eagles fans. I'm sure there are people across the pond and across Atlantic who may not understand what that means. Sorry for that, guys, but I think Mark has not watched the Apple series Ted Lasso yet. So maybe he needs some education in that. But anyway, Mark, how much of a reality is this for organizations today?
Yeah, this is far from reality for accounts payable leaders. Today, when we talk to accounts payable staff, they're bogged down with manual, repetitive tasks. They spend their days keying invoice data, pushing paper, fixing errors and mistakes, chasing down information, and responding to calls and emails from suppliers and stakeholders about where things stand in the process. And all the while, Sushil, they've got to juggle dozens and dozens of rules and regulations and auditor guidelines and industry best practices for how it is that invoices ought to get processed and payments need to get paid. And that's the problem. It takes them away from all of the things that they really want to be focused on. And when we think about why this is, how did this process get so broken? Well, it goes back to all of the manual handling that we have with invoice processing. It might surprise you today to learn that 64% of businesses manually handle most of the invoices that they receive from suppliers. And this is startling when we think about what's happened over the past 2 years. Today, well, most AP departments are receiving most of their invoices via email. Well, in many cases, those PDFs have become the new paper because we don't have the technology to facilitate that straight through processing, that nirvana that we were talking about a moment ago. And so now we have just exacerbated the problem in many cases. And when you think about all of this, Sushil, no wonder that CFOs rank accounts payable as the most labor-intensive, paper-intensive, and time-consuming finance and administration function. That's right, worse than things like tax and payroll and accounts receivable and even reporting. It's no wonder that CFOs also believe that accounts payable is the finance and administration function that would benefit most from automation.
Wow, 64% of organizations still manually handling most of the invoices. That's crazy. Ron, is touch-free processing a reality for customers today? To what extent can IBML with IBML Cloud Capture achieve this for our customers?
Neil, I am actually very excited to show you how IBML Cloud Capture can address that very problem that Mark Brousseau has brought, and that is, how can we get this out of that chaotic paper tumble that we saw on that previous slide and bring this into a logical, organized, and highly automated system? So, again, the best way to start is to have a system that is capable of being able to, at a very low level, recognize that, first of all, this document is an invoice. Second of all, that this document may, in fact, not just be an invoice, but can be associated with a specific vendor. And, being able to do that automatically is a great trick. We call that classification. And classification is where the system resolves to a specific document type. But in ICC for AP, it also resolves right down to the vendor level. And that has a lot of advantages. Once we know who the vendor is, then we start picking up all this valuable business data, including things like invoice number, invoice date, PO number, and all of those things, are from variation to variation, from vendor to vendor. Even though the vendors change and the locations of the information change, that information stays the same in the sense that you're really, when processing invoices, looking to grab like information from these different documents, normalize it. If it's money, it should look like money. If it's a date, it should look like a date, and then be able to move that forward and process it. One last item very quickly. Sometimes in processing invoices, what our customers will want is the ability to be able to look at line item detail as well. So what the software does automatically, if line item is desired, is it will detect where that line item grid is, pull all that data in, and then have that data available for our customers, our clients, to be able to go through parse. Let me just hit save. Go through and parse out the pieces that they need and use those, transact those into whatever that line of business backend system happens to be.
Thanks, Ron. That was very brave trying to do a live demo for a webinar. That's great.
There's a thin line, Sushil, between bravery and I won't use the next word, but
yeah. No, but
implied.
The way you showed it, Ron, that really looked too simple, right? You have invoices here that have come in, and you show on the right side all the data that it's been gathering from it itself. I'm sure our customers onboard new vendors with new invoice type, or existing vendors change their invoice format. what does our customer have to do in that situation? So in this case, it looked like you had already a preset template and you were able to retrieve the information. How difficult is it for our customers to train the system with new invoice types?
That's one of the reasons that I'm, most pleased to show this particular demonstration, because that is the trick, right? And there are plenty of systems out there that will do automated invoice processing. But the trick, as I just said, is how do you get those exceptions into the system? Do you need an IT team? Do you need a team of developers? Do you need a team of software experts? And for all three, I'm going to say no. The best person to set up your invoice, your new invoice coming in that the AI has never seen before, is in fact your AP clerk. Why? They know these documents. These are their lifeblood, day in, day out. They'll take a glance at this. They'll see Parlex and go, I know where the PO, the invoice, et cetera, is. So having an inline methodology for any invoice the system hasn't seen before to pop up for that AP clerk to take a look at and set up is one of the major strengths of this software offering. So I'm going to go right up to Learn, and I'm going to go to the Learning queue. So I meant to talk just a moment about digital fingerprints, and I'm going to segue to that just very, very briefly. But a digital fingerprint is an AI learned document where we've already exposed it. It's taken a look. We've told it where all the valuable business data is. And that's as simple a setup as 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to show you how that's done inline. This is a fingerprint that's already set up, right? You already saw Parlex on the previous demonstration. But if I'm an AP clerk sitting down, drinking my coffee, doing my day-to-day, I'm going to drop a set of invoices in, let those process, and then when they're done processing, I may have something present here inside of the learning queue. So here I have an unclassified invoice. I'm going to go ahead and hit Create Fingerprint. Okay, I know from taking a glance at it that this is a CLEs. So if I wanted a better look, I could double click it and then use the magnify fly, right? Let's take a look, see, yep, that's a COEs. I need to make a fingerprint of a COE, so I'm going to say Create Fingerprint, fingerprint name. I'm going to say CLEs invoice. Now I've just classified this thing as a CLEs invoice. And then I'm going to associate it with what I use to process invoices, which is what my system called Invoice Demo. Once I've done these two things, I may also put my initials on it. Sometimes that's just good for accountability, right? Who did what? But in this case, I've said add a fingerprint. This is a fingerprint name, CLEs invoice. That's the tag, okay. Wait for it to come up. That's it. I've now created a fingerprint for CLEs. Now, a couple great features that I think are really important in understanding this as well. First is that everything in this software solution is actually driven by the backend archive. In other words, unlike a lot of offerings in this space, where every time you build a template, you have to remember the complete list of things that you want to build. The beauty of ICC is that since I've already got this associated to a known content type already built in the database, that when I start adding fields, the fields that are associated with invoice are going to pop up all ready to go. I don't have to worry about fat fingering them when I name them. And even more importantly, the valuable business rules that we want to enforce on these fields are already tied in. They're already, so enforcing a date as a date, a PO database morphology, if we have one, any of the terms looking like actual money, any of those types of things are already built into the solution so that every time you have to add an invoice, you don't need that IT team of geniuses in there building this thing from the ground up. So simply put, my first action, going to associate this with property vendor. I'm going to tell it the vendor is Sealy's. There it is. I'm done. I'm done in associating it with Sealy's. I'll do a couple fields, right? I'm going to say, here's my invoice number. And if I believe that invoice number is pretty much going to be there every single time, I can just, frame it or just like that. I'm going to say it's invoice number. That's it. I'm going to hit save. Invoice number is found. A little more complexly, if I've got a piece of data that I think may float up or down, like this one down here, my amount total. For that, I am going to just put in a quick rule. That quick rule is going to say, you know what, look for total amount. And this sounds complicated. It's called a regular expression, but on invoice, we're just going to tell it to trap what it sees, right? Look for total amount, key what you see, and then in finding total amount, I'm going to put a big box because maybe we could owe the Sealy's people millions, right? And I'm going to say that is the total amount or the invoice total. There you have it. Save, and I'm done. And again, putting this in the hands of the AP clerk in line to handle as an exception means that one, they're grabbing all the exact business data off of this that they need. And two, the next time a Sealy's comes in, it's already set up, ready to go. No 90-day setup of people examining the system. No retooling is ever necessary.
Thanks for that demo, Ron. That seems really easy for anybody to do. This really is fantastic. It enables democratization, and actual AP clerks who are experts in their vendor invoices train the system without a superpower user having to use complex rule sets or coding to do this. Why is this a better approach to writing rules for a fewer set of invoices to train the system?
First of all, I think the most immediate thing that comes to mind, Sushil, is you can begin using this system day one. There is no 90 to 120 day lag of people setting up hundreds of variations, trying to build that one t-shirt fits all invoice approach where, no matter how it's laid out, we're just trying to jam all that into one solution. The ICC methodology is actually the exact opposite. And that is, you know what? Train an invoice as it comes in, treat it just like you would a normal exception, but then let the AI leverage what you did to set that thing up, and always make your system better day by day, because anything that comes in that it hasn't seen, by the end of the day, it's seen it, and it is now that much better. And oh, by the way, that also works when vendors change their layout. We know that vendors always keep with the same invoice layout over and over. They never change it. Their marketing department doesn't decide on changing colors or any of those type of things, of course. So with a variable world, you need a solution that will allow you to roll with the changes as they happen.
Yeah, Ron, we do have a question from the audience here. How do you separate the freight portion of the invoice? It seems very specific. I thought it's best addressed by you.
Oh, thank you. One thing, in fact, I will pop right back here. There we go. So the first thing I did when I came in here and set this up as an invoice is I set it up as content type invoice. So for the freight part, if that would come in, be classified separately, and I would just set it up as freight. And you may not see it on this particular one. I did put this in as a limited, but you'll see the idea I'm talking about. I've got a bill of lading in here. I've got a packing list. I've got statement list bills in here. But if I needed the freight portion separately, I'd simply set it up as its own content type. The software is very good at distinguishing small differences like invoice or freight bill. And it does that, by the way, through the use of a couple key technologies. At its first pass, it's always looking at all of the content on that page and how it's laid out. And the AI uses that to classify it as an invoice, as a freight bill, whatever it may be. And there's a lot of power in there to tilt that field if you need to. but in most instances, using that mix of text and images to trigger the AI on what it's looking at is all that's needed for us to be able to successfully classify and but keep together as a packet an invoice and a freight bill.
Can IBML, one more question. We have a lot of questions here. Can IBML Cloud Capture extract of any type of document?
Yes, it can.
So whether it's
I paused there because I could go on, but that may be an entirely additional webinar. I'm just going to throw out machine printed based documents, handprint based documents, OMR documents, barcodes. It can work on any document type. It works especially well on AP because of that ability to resolve down a classification, not just to type invoice, but to specify the vendor, which is one of the reasons I get really excited about it. But it is in fact a good application, a great application for any forms or document processing needs.
Yeah, so Ron, would I be right to say then IBML Cloud Capture is able to handle very structured forms like a application form or a semi-structured document like invoices where you know it's the same data but coming off different vendors at different spots in the document itself, or even unstructured, which is really written text. And IBML Cloud Capture can handle all of that.
Absolutely, Sushil. It handles all three elegantly and extensensively. So you know, whether they're very structured, very predictable forms, all the way into the world of unstructured, multi-page, unpredictable document length, it is in fact a solution for all of those.
Thank you, Ron. Mark, over to you. I know you've been eagerly waiting there. Mark, after all that magic from Ron, what if customers are not using technology like IBML Cloud Capture today and are either using legacy capture solutions or have no automation in place today? Yeah. What are some of the costs of manually handling supplier invoices?
Well, if you're using manual or semi-automated processes to perform the types of functions that Ron was just showing you, you're paying too much. Your costs are too high. 84% of the typical accounts payable practitioner's day is spent on heads down transaction processing, doing the kinds of things that Ron just showed you his software automates. And now you might be wondering, so what's the real cost of that? Well, when we look at statistics from the industry, we find that 62% of the median cost of accounts payable is wrapped up in labor. So when you eliminate some of those tasks like extracting that data, validating that data, automating the setup of invoices, well, now all of a sudden, now we've started to really move the needle. And what's really surprising, Sushil, is that even accounts payable managers, the people who run the department, they spend more time every day on transaction processing than on the managerial tasks they were hired to perform, things like hiring and training staff. So you might start wondering, okay, so how do I build a business case for the type of technology that Ron's talking about here? How can I sell this to senior management? How can I justify this expense? Well, there's really 5 key things, Sushil, I want you to home in on. The first is the costs, right? Highly automated accounts payable departments spend less than 1/4 as much as their peers with little or no technology. I don't care how seasoned your staff is, they simply can't beat the efficiencies you gain from automation. And that brings us to our second key driver of the business case here, which is around productivity. We all are concerned about the difficulty in hiring staff today. And many of us are looking for ways to scale our operations more efficiently without having to hire more staff. Well, the thing is if you're using these manual or semi-automated processes such as an on-premise solution, well, you're not getting the productivity you ought to get. Highly automated AP departments process 8 times as many invoices per full-time equivalent as their peers with little or no automation. And here's the thing, Sushil, if you combine a high level of AP automation with a high percentage of PO-based invoices, so now we can extract that data that Ron showed and bang it right up against some PO data residing in our ERP or accounting system. Now we can process 11 times as many invoices per FTE. Think about all the time your department will save if we're able to process that many more invoices per FTE. All the people you won't have to hire as your business grows. And it might be most startling here is that even in semi-automated departments, maybe you already have some 10-year-old OCR technology, chances are you still have lots of juice that you could squeeze out of the orange. PricewaterhouseCoopers finds that 22% of all the time that an AP practitioner spends every day is spent on a task that ought to be eliminated through automation, 22%. But that's not the only cost driver here, Sushil. When you automate your AP department, you're also able to accelerate your invoice approval. So now we're able to automatically ingest those invoices. We don't have to open the mail. We can extract that data. We can validate it. We can automatically post it to our ERP. If it doesn't match, we can route it digitally. Well, now all of a sudden, now we've got a lean, mean, fast AP approving machine. So now a highly automated AP department is able to approve invoices in less than 1/4 of the time of their peers with little or no automation. Now you might say, hey, Mark, what does that have to do with costs? Well, when you can approve invoices faster, you avoid late payment penalties, you capture more early payment discounts, you get fewer phone calls from your suppliers about where things stand in the process, and you can better forecast your cash. Another way that you're able to reduce costs through AP automation is by reducing the number of errors your staff has. Highly automated AP departments, they experience less than 1/3 as many errors as their peers with little or no automation, including those with antiquated on-premise technology. And when you have fewer errors, that means you're going to have fewer duplicate payments, less time wasted trying to fix things. And then that final way that you reduce costs is by improving your supplier relationships. When you deploy a technology like the one Ron just showed you, well, now you're going to be able to pay your suppliers faster, more accurately, provide better visibility into the process. And this does a lot for you. This provides you with better leverage with your suppliers when it's time to renegotiate your contracts. You're going to be the business that they want to buy from, that they want to sell to. When you put it all together, it's no wonder that AP departments are looking at automation as a way to reduce their costs, Sushil.
Great insight there, Mark. With so many benefits, you really wonder why people are still not taking action, or maybe they are taking action. But I'll get back to that question in a moment. Meanwhile, Ron, how can we help our customers reduce cost of processing invoices manually? Can you show us some magic there with Ibml Cloud Capture?
Absolutely, Sushil. And sorry, there we go. That didn't move over as quickly as I thought, but it does move over. Absolutely thrilled to show it. I get so enchanted when I hear Mark talking about reducing costs, because he is looking at the hard labor costs and the cost of doing business. And one of the things that I want to show you is, yes, and we can also save on some additional IT costs as well. I'll move into the labor costs in just a moment. But here's the first and best part of my pitch. Right up here in the top left corner of the demo, you see ibmlsalesus.ibmlcc.io. What does that mean? That is the web address of my deployment of this software, meaning that I didn't have to, if I were a real implementation of ICC, and I am, I didn't have to have anybody come to my site, put it on my laptop. When my instance of the software was ready, I got an email with a link. I went in, I put my credentials in, and I started to work. So no engagement, no people in the server room. The beauty of cloud capture is cloud is right there in the center. And of course, and I don't have this to demo today, but sometimes when I come in, there'll be a little information note that'll tell me that my software's been updated. So again, it is managed software, updated when updates are released. You get a full report of what's gone in, with no downtime for you or your staff to try and figure out what day or what hour you're going to stop your incredibly important end of quarter or end of year processing to put a patch in, right? So all of this again is done as part of the subscription for IBML Cloud Capture. And further, let's go over to Mark's costs though, because Mark's costs are hard, solid costs. And just want to make sure that when we're looking at these things, you are in fact looking at fields that are not only very solidly, very accurately OCR'd, but you're also looking at data that's already been pre-checked against the rules. And to pull out one of Mark's points, if I've got a PO database to bounce this stuff against, he noted, I love this stat, 11 times faster. That's because so many of these will be, I'm going to borrow a term from check processing, kills. If I know the vendor, if it matches the PO number, if the amount matches, if everything on here matches our expectation, then I don't have to do anything other than say, let it go through silently. And in fact, even in building these demos, you'll notice there's a green check mark next to all my documents. That actually means that I didn't need to stop and look at any of these. Now, true, it is a demo, but the point is with so many documents either being scanned on, superior high quality equipment like our own Fusion scanners, or being born digital, or both. ICC allows you to be able to accept data streams from both those vectors, or really any vector, and be able to apply this type of logic and accuracy to the items that you're bringing in. Finally, not to lose sight of it, we also have the ability to pull in emails. So if you have invoices at yourcompany.com as a way for your vendors to send these to you, we can pull those right out of the email box, pull them in, process them. No need for your AP clerks to either download them to a folder and pull them in, or I'm horrified to share, but have seen pull them down, print them, and then work on them manually on the desktop. I'm not going to out anybody, but to say that that is still happening in 2022, it is indeed, and it is a shame. We can help with that immediately.
Thanks, Ron. We do have some questions from the audience. And is PO matching an option with this system?
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely, yes. So we, if you have a PO database available, we can leverage that. And also, of course, a vendor database. So generally, if you got the one, you've got the other. I've seen some vendor databases that are in dire need of cleanup. So we may have to help you with a little bit of that. But if you have those data infrastructures, yes, we can leverage those, and they are very useful.
I'm very tempted to answer these questions. The nerdy side of me is very tempted to answer these questions, Ron, but I think I'll deflect it to you. The next question is, can the system integrate with Oracle?
Yes, absolutely. So the beauty of the integration end of IBML Cloud Capture is, one, if you're scanning on IBML equipment and you already have a destination, ICC is dropped in completely natively inside of Software Capture Suite. So you would, not really the question asked, but I'm circling back. So in that sense, if you're using Capture Suite on an IBML scanner and you want to turn on ICC, but still keep your output flow, you can do that. And that is native to how the software is integrated into our overall suite. In terms of data backend, Microsoft, and all of those, of course, are built in, but it can release to Oracle. It can release to any data set that we needed to, whether that be Oracle, Oracle Financials. And there are one of three vectors, just to make sure I get them all. We can always do a file release, right? Build a flat file or build a structured XML file that the system will pick up. That's one. Two, integrate via the API layer. So we can integrate via API, be able to transact it in that way. Or three, if neither of those vectors is viable or they're going to be very expensive or time consuming, we also have RPA at our disposal. So we can use bots to move that information straight into Oracle or straight into any other system, just as if a user were doing it themselves into the system itself.
So when you said RPA, Ron, I assume you meant robotic process automation.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify for the audience, just in case. Thanks, Ron, for those detailed explanations. Mark, coming back to you, the question I had earlier from what you had mentioned, you had said of all the benefits that AP leaders get from automating. Now that we've heard about the challenges that AP leaders are facing and how we can address them, are AP leaders already taking action? What are AP leaders doing about all this, Mark?
Well, what they're doing about it, Sushil, is they're doubling down on automation. 71% of all AP departments have plans to deploy automated technology this year, either for the first time or refreshing their existing technology. And that's the key. What might surprise a lot of you on the line is that 44% of AP leaders who describe their department as being largely automated, they have plans to deploy more technology. So if you have an antiquated on-premise system that you just don't think is still meeting your needs, well, this is the time to start automating. This is the time to think about a technology refresh. Incidentally, only 6% of departments that rely on manual AP processing, those guys plan to stick with their manual existence. Good luck with that. Well, put this all together, Sushil. When we think about what's going on here with all this automation, what this really speaks to is this desire to be able to achieve end-to-end processing, straight through processing. Back to our goal at the beginning of this webinar. Organizations recognize that semi-automated and certainly manual processes simply aren't good enough anymore, right? The business expects more out of accounts payable. They expect it to do more with less, to be faster, to provide more data downstream quicker. And so what we're looking at is a paradigm shift, right? Organizations are saying, we've got to accelerate these digital transformation initiatives in accounts payable. What might surprise a lot of folks is that a study by the Institute of Finance and Management from earlier this year found that 61% of all AP departments have some kind of technology today. Now, to be clear, it's not end-to-end technology, but they've got something today to help them process their invoices and pay their suppliers.
Yeah, Mark, that's really interesting. So on one side, we say that 61% of all AP departments have some type of invoice processing technology. But earlier in our conversation, you did mention most departments, I think you mentioned 64%, if I remember right, manually handle most of the invoices they receive. So how are traditional approaches to AP automations falling short of touch-free processing?
Yeah, those contradictory statistics, Sushil, really speak to how the needs of AP departments are no longer being met by these antiquated on-premise solutions. And they're really falling short in a couple of ways. I mean, one of them is what Ron was speaking of just a few moments ago, these complicated implementations. Look, who has the time for long, risky, and expensive deployments? You also find that a lot of these on-premise solutions, well, they simply have limited capabilities, right? And in many cases, it's hard to add capabilities. Some cases, it's impossible. In a lot of instances, it's expensive and requires lots of a burden on your IT staff. You also find that with these older on-premise solutions, well, they provide lousy data capture results. In a lot of cases, these technologies weren't even built for data capture. Maybe they were built for document management or e-invoicing, not for paper and certainly not for emails. You also find that a lot of these older on-prem solutions really don't provide the level of integration that AP departments need. If you want to achieve straight through posting, if you want to be able to do that PO matching that Ron spoke of with a high degree of accuracy, well, you need to be integrated to Oracle or whatever accounting or ERP system you're using. And it can't be a file upload at the end of the day. You've got to have a seamless integration. You also find that a lot of these old on-prem solutions really trap you into these fixed contracts, and those suckers are expensive and they're hard to get out from under. And then similarly, a lot of these folks are banging you with unexpected charges. So when it's time to upgrade the technology or add new capabilities that you desperately need, well, now you're on the hook for more expenses. And this is key right now as businesses are trying to scale up their operations for the economic recovery. You also find that these solutions really aren't flexible. And this is what we've seen over the past 20 months, right? Adapting those on-prem solutions to this remote work environment, that's been downright hard. And with no telling when AP is coming back to the office or if it's ever going to come back to the office, we better be sure that these solutions can be flexible enough to support our team no matter where they work and no matter where or how those invoices are received. And finally, you find that a lot of these antiquated solutions have really outdated security. And a lot of that speaks to those complicated implementations. These are big monolithic technologies, and it's hard to be able to adapt them to the ever-changing threats of bad guys. So if I were to put it all together, Sushil, my message to the folks listening today is that now is the time to rethink the way you're processing your invoices and to take a hard look at your underlying cost structure.
Thanks, Mark, for that insight. Ron, how does Ibml Cloud Capture overcome some of these limitations of legacy capture solutions, such as lengthy deployment, poor data capture results, lack of integration, and outdated security?
Again, Sushil, I believe it overcomes those particular challenges very elegantly. As I pointed out, it resolves right to that web instance of your software. But what I didn't mention at that point was the fact that that particular instance of the software is for me and me alone. Each customer that we have would have an independently secure instance of the software. Software security is built on Kubernetes, making it absolutely solid in terms of who can get in there and what they can do. Everything inside of the software itself also is role-based. So I didn't show you a login screen this morning, folks, when I came in, but the first step in getting in is always who are you? And when I logged in on my credential, I see all this stuff. And the reason I see all this stuff is I'm me. And if I were, coming in as and I'm responsible for all this. But if I were coming in and my job was just, going through the invoices and I logged in on that credential, AP clerk, then I would be able to see whatever we had designated for that, being able to index, being able, to be able to do inline learning and those type of roles. So again, having this securely deployed, so that you are sure to have an instance that is readily available, and that too then segues over into the idea that you're not stuck with the hardware that your software is installed on. It's installed in the cloud, and therefore any lengthy on-prem installation that you're taking care of, that your IT staff is taking care of, as that hardware ages out, you have to roll that software forward on those type of deployments. So not only is it lengthy, and not only are you taking care of it yourself, but you're always going to be on something that's eventually going to be legacy. So the ability to have software like this that rolls with the times, maintained for you, updates as necessary, absolutely addresses those points.
Hey, Ron, thank you so much for that explanation. If we can switch to the next slide, Ron. I think we're close to the end of our scheduled time here, 2 minutes left. If we can move on to the next slide, I can help wrap up our conversation here. Okay. So, folks, we've heard today, thanks, Ron, and thanks, Mark. It's time to wrap up. We heard Mark talk about the challenges and trends that AP leaders are facing today, and Ron provide us a brief demo of some solutions to overcome those challenges. Ibml Cloud Capture, the market's first truly agile all-in-one solution that helps you capture data from diverse sources of business documents by understanding documents and data using advanced machine learning techniques, minimizing human errors, rework, and saving costs. Uses robotic process automation technologies to integrate with or validate with line of business applications. It also helps minimize repetitive tasks for humans in process. You also can store, search, retrieve, and view content from a single platform using content services. All of these mean you're a step closer to touch-free processing of invoices without the burden and heavy lift of long implementations, slower return on investments, and you only pay for what you use and pay as you go solution. This brings us to the end of today's webinar. We will be posting a recording of this webinar for all of you, and we will send that over on email. Thank you very much, and thanks for your time again for joining us today. Mark, Ron, you can say bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.